Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be watching from and whatever time it may be where you are. Welcome back. My name is Benekon from Brit in Germany, and I make videos about living in Germany, about German language and culture. And today I wanted to talk about movie titles or film titles that have been translated into German. Now, there are a lot of films out there which have some rather questionable translations where you don't really understand how they came up with these titles. But today I wanted to talk about movie translations which really do seem to make a lot of sense and which I think really convey or display sort of the cultural differences between Germany and the US or Britain. One thing I really have observed, not with all of them, but with some of the movie translations and the examples I'm going to show you today, is that the sort of American or British way of titling movies is really quite artistic and sort of tries to create questions in the viewer's mind, whereas the German translations are really very direct and to the point and describe exactly what the film is about. So there are no sort of open questions, and I just find it a very telling difference between the two cultures. I think one of the best examples of Germany really translating a very artistic title into something very direct is the 2004 film Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. Now, this is really a title where even English speakers are just like, what the hell does this mean? What is this about? You have no real idea what this film is about. It's even more confusing because it's starring Jim Carrey, who, originally was sort of a comedy actor and did all these stupid comedy films like Ace Ventura and Liar Liar, and this is really the opposite of that kind of film. But this film basically treats love as a subject of extended philosophical inquiry. So it's really quite sophisticated, it's quite deep, it's quite philosophical, and I do think that the title, the English title, really does a good job of conveying the fact that it's going to be a philosophical take. Just because you don't really understand the title when you first read it, it forces you to pose questions, which the whole film is really about. So the film is about a couple who fall out of love, who end up hating each other. Both of them want to erase their memories, to just forget about each other and forget about their life. And this is where the German title comes in, Vergiss mich nicht, so forget me not or don't forget me, basically, which is very accurate. It's very to the point. That is what the film is about. But you kind of lose a little bit of this artistic, philosophical element by translating it in that way. But I still think it's a very accurate, a very good title translation, because the German market then immediately understands. And for those in the know, apparently the title Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind comes from a poem from Alexander Pope, which was written in 1717. A film that I can ironically watch over and over again is the 1993 Groundhog Day, featuring Bill Murray. So this film is really about him sort of going on a journey of self-discovery and trying to improve on his failings. But the film title is really celebrating the North American tradition, which is on the 2nd of February. And funnily enough, this is actually sort of in part a German tradition. It sort of follows the Candlemas festival, and it was traditionally a badger, not a groundhog, in Germany. But there is a funny phrase referring to this, and I have to read it because I don't have it in my head. But it basically is, sonnt sich der Dachs in der Lichtmesswoche, so geht auf 4 Wochen wieder zur Loche, which basically is the same as the North American tradition. So if the badger or the groundhog sees his shadow, or if it's a sunny day when he comes out, it means that winter will be extended because it's going to go back into his hole. So the German translation of this movie title is Und täglich grüßt das Murmeltier, which I think, like I was saying at the beginning, is a very accurate, a very straight to the point translation, because it describes exactly what is happening in the movie. It's about the groundhog, but it is about basically täglich, so daily. Bill Murray's day is repeating itself until he learns his mistakes. Another very interesting movie translation which shows that, some phrases or words just don't really translate into another language is Monty Python and the Holy Grail. The title for this in German is Die Ritter der Kokosnuss. And you might think, if you haven't seen it, like, what the hell? What do those two things have to do with each other? It's actually a very, I think, very clever, very good translation. So the Holy Grail in the English language is not exclusively used, together with the church or with religion. And I think you wouldn't do this in the German language. The Heilige Gral is really something that I think, in my opinion, is relegated to the church and to religion. I think you really have to have seen the film to understand the title. Basically, Monty Python ran out of budget, and in their usual comical, silly way, they just pretended to ride around on horses. They were using broomsticks to signify the horse, and they were using coconuts to mimic the sound of the horse's hooves on the street. So in this way, I think the German audience then gets a sense that it's going to be a silly, funny movie. Once you've watched the film, then you realize that it's actually very accurate, so there are no false expectations. You really understand exactly why it was termed in this way. So this list definitely would not be complete without a couple of Steven Spielberg films, and as you probably know, Steven Spielberg loves his war movies, and one of them is Saving Private Ryan. And the interesting thing about this, so the German title is just Der Soldat James Ryan. So it's very neutral, it's very watered down, there's no real insinuations or inferences at all from the movie. You just know it's going to be a war movie because there's the word soldier in it, but other than that, you don't really have much idea of what's going on. In the American or the English version, Saving Private Ryan, that already sets up a sort of struggle. You are expecting there's going to be maybe a hero and a victim or something like that with the word saving in it. And it's funny because I think in the US, especially the US, war movies are often used as a metaphor for patriotism and glory and heroism, and this just is not okay in Germany. There's no way you're going to get a war movie in Germany which is symbolizing heroism or glory or that kind of thing. It's just, a cultural divide. It's just a no-go. There's no way of doing it. And I just find it very, very interesting. You can see this very stark black and white in the title choice. Der Soldat James Ryan is just very neutral. There's no real way of misinterpreting the title, whereas in the American version, Saving Private Ryan already sets up a bit of a struggle, and you already know that Private Ryan is worth saving. An even better example of this, in my opinion, is the 2012 film War Horse. Now, if you don't know this film, it basically just tracks the relationship between a horse and his owner, a stable boy, through the war. So they both get dragged into the war, but they are separated. And of course, a lot of tragic things happen. It does display the war as just something terrible, but there is this underlying sort of positive, heartwarming story in a way. The title choice of War Horse is, it's very old, it's very grand, it's kind of in your face, and you know that it's going to have something to do with war and explosions and death and tragedy and all that kind of stuff. The German title is just Gefährtin, and I actually only really knew this word in conjunction with Lebensgefährtin. So some people refer to their partner as their Lebensgefährtin, which I found a little bit strange when I first heard this, but it means maybe you're not married to them, you're Lebensgefährtin. And the word is just one word, Gefährtin, which I think is accurate because it is really about the companionship, the relationship between the two. They have a very close bond, which is very nicely displayed in the film. But you have no idea just from the title that it's really a film about war. The German version really chooses to focus on the positive and the sort of heartwarming aspect of the film, which I think is very telling, again, of the cultural divide between the two countries. Another favorite film of mine from 2007 is Hot Fuzz, from the British comedy juggernaut Simon Pegg and Nick Frost. And it's basically a parody of American cop films. I think this really was not possible to translate, so Germany left the title of Hot Fuzz and just added a tagline or a subtitle, something that they love to do, of zwei abgewichste Profis. I would say this is really a very British film, and there are a lot of cultural references that you might not necessarily understand. One, if you haven't watched a lot of American cop movies, and two, if you're not really familiar with British culture. So it is quite niche because, again, fuzz is a slang word for the police, and hot is, referring to this sort of action in your face, always on the go, what sort of American cop movies are like. and fuzz being, another word for the cops or the police. Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels. This is the 1998 Guy Ritchie film starring Vinnie Jones and Jason Statham. It was actually Jason Statham's debut. You probably know him now from his Transporter franchise and all the other sort of action movies he's been in. But apparently Guy Ritchie picked him off the street. He was selling fake perfume and jewelry, and there were actually a lot of other sort of acting roles, speaking roles, which were played by people who had never acted before. So it has a little bit of a sort of homegrown feel to it, but I really think it is a great British movie. If you really want to hear what British men, British guys sound like, then watch this film. You might need to turn on the subtitles because they do have fairly strong accents. But the title, Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels, just would not have translated into German. It's really referring to a gun, which you see on the movie poster cover. The German translation is just Buber, Dame, König, Gras, which is referring to a deck of cards, Jack, Queen, King, Ace. And at least in this way, the German audience has a little bit more of an idea of what they could maybe expect in the film. What are some films that you have seen that you think the title really is a good translation, a good representation of what the film is about? Love to hear your thoughts as always down in the comments below. But that's it for today. Take care and I will see you in the next one. Bye bye.